Hey guys, welcome to Juicy Tea, where I read out the best stories on Reddit, so you don't have to. The funny, shocking, and satisfyingly juicy. Call the HOA because my yard is devaluing your house? Alright, I'll have it cleaned by the inspection date. Posted by Jumboface. This is a story of my mother's. She's always been incredibly hard-headed, but this sticks out a lot from my teenage years. Once a year, she always had us pull everything out of the garage. Lots of boxes. My mum has a concerning amount of possessions. So we could go through it and clean/reorganize. This particular year, the couple who owned the house from across from us were in the process of selling their house. Unhappy with my mother's unsightly driveway, covered in boxes soiling their good image, they called the HOA. By the time my mother received the letter, the mess had already been put away, but they decided to get her on a few other complaints, such as the bike against the side of the house and the patchy gravel. She had 2 weeks to get everything up to standard. Petty and easily frustrated, my mother knew immediately who called, since the couple had come over and told her flat out that with their renovations, they would be selling their house for way more than any other house in this neighbourhood, and would appreciate if she respected that by keeping her property on par. For the next 2 weeks, every box in that garage was in our driveway. The couch and the living room TV came out next. This was early summer, so it was perfect weather to sit in your yard in your short shorts and sports bra. My mum made sure to wave and smile every time they brought someone over for a showing. The final step came at the end of the 2 weeks though. After the yard had been cleaned up and cleared by the HOA, my mother went to the local Walmart and bought a for sale sign. She wrote a quarter of their ridiculous asking price on it and finished off with a big "sold" written across the front and stuck it in our front yard. No clue what they ended up selling their house for, but it sat empty for a while, so I assume it was below the asking price. Too long didn't read. Don't tell my mum she's devaluing your house, or she'll go far out of her way to do so, all while complying with the HOA. Entitled Mum expects a complete stranger to watch her kid. Our next post comes from the Best of Reddit or Update subreddit. Posted by Pain Sonoma. So, this is a weird one. Not my story, but a friend who messaged me right after it happened to vent. Cause, what the hell? So, Karen moved into the apartment next to my friend's a couple weeks ago. Karen has struck up short, polite conversations with my friend just 2 times in that period, with the second being yesterday, the day before this whole fiasco unfolded. This morning, about 9 AM, while my friend was having a nice Saturday breakfast, someone started aggressively banging on her front door. When my friend answered, Karen was standing there with a 5-year-old girl who had a little backpack on. Sounding very flustered, Karen said she was sorry to have to ask this with no notice, but could my friend please watch her kid for a few hours? Because Karen had somewhere really important to be. Now, something you need to know about my friend is that she can't stand kids and has no idea how to deal with them. Like, she tenses up and gets super awkward if a kid so much as waves at her in a supermarket. My friend is also disabled. She uses a motorized wheelchair sometimes, or a walking cane for short distances, or when she's just pottering around her own home. She lives with a girlfriend who's also her carer. Her chronic illness involves fainting spells and a lot of brain fog, so by her own account, she's absolutely not someone who should be left in charge of a child. Karen has seen my friend using both her wheelchair and her cane, and has seen her girlfriend, who was at work when all this happened, helping her in and out of their car. So my friend responded with a firm no, explaining that her medical conditions meant that the child wouldn't be safe in her care, and that she's not well enough at the moment to have any guests, let alone an unattended child in her home. Karen immediately flipped from pleading and simpering to hand-on-hip indignation, accusing my friend of faking her disabilities because, of course, if she can walk at all, then she obviously doesn't need a wheelchair, right? And threatened to report her to Centrelink, welfare, if my friend didn't watch the kid for her. Never mind the fact that my friend isn't on welfare. Her girlfriend has a high-paying job, and my friend works somewhere between part-time and full-time hours from home. She's a goddamn machine, and I don't know how she manages it. Newsflash, not all disabled people are unable to work. Although, of course, getting employers to actually hire us is another matter, cause ableism. So my friend basically said, I'm not on Centrelink, and I don't appreciate being blackmailed. find another babysitter because I'm not it, and close her door. Karen kept banging on the door for a bit, but eventually left. About 20 minutes later, my friend heard a very faint, timid tapping on her front door. She said if she hadn't been so close, she probably wouldn't have heard it. She sighed heavily, having kinda already guessed what was happening. She opened the door, and there was Karen's child, who'd clearly been crying, clutching the shoulder straps of her little backpack. She said very softly, "Mummy said I could stay here today." Now, like I said, my friend cannot stand kids, but even she said that this kid was an absolute darling throughout this entire fiasco, and the most she ever did was cry, because her mother is clearly a goddamn monster. Karen had driven off and sent her child to my friend's door, clearly thinking that if she left her with no alternative, she'd just have to play along and babysit her child for her anyway, especially since my friend had literally no way of contacting Karen. Wrong. My friend had escaped abusive parents at a young age, and this stuff made her furious. She got the child settled in front of the TV with a drink and some snacks and called the police. Yeah, my neighbor just abandoned her 5-year-old daughter outside her apartment, and the kids showed up at my door, asking to come in. When the officers arrived, my friend told them the full story, and while they were appalled, she said they weren't surprised. One said, "You'd be shocked about how not rare this kind of thing is," which, honestly, is kind of the worst part of all of this. The officers took Karen's child with them and were really sweet with her, explaining that she wasn't in any kind of trouble and had done the right thing, and they were there to look after her and find out where her mummy had gone. My friend found out later they were able to contact the child's father, who's currently finalizing a divorce from Karen, and was also appalled, but not remotely surprised by what she'd done. He is hoping he gets full custody of the poor child after this. Update. I messaged my friend asking if she had any updates, and oh boy, that's an emphatic yes. This morning, she had another knock on her door, only it was the dad with Karen's child in tow. He went there to apologize for what his ex had done, and so that he and his kid could thank my friend for looking after her and for calling the police. She said he seemed like a really good guy who was clearly putting his kid first in all of this, which was really reassuring to hear. According to his lawyer, her calling the police and handling everything the way she had basically gift-wrapped the custody win for him, because what the F kind of court would ever grant Karen custody after the stunt she'd pulled? His lawyer was over the moon when the dad called him. My friend also asked the dad what the F was so important that Karen had abandoned her own daughter over it. You guys ready for this? It's so goddamn cliche. It was an appointment at the nail salon. She'd brought the kid several times previously and just demanded that the staff babysit her and refused to even acknowledge the kid during her me time. When she'd called yesterday morning to book a last-minute appointment because Karen's, the staff put their foot down and told her she could no longer bring her child to her appointments and would be refused service if she did. The dad also said that Karen had shown up so late to the appointment that they'd refused to see her anyway, again, cause Karen's. So she'd abandoned her daughter cause she wanted her me time getting her nails done. The dad told my friend that me time is an excuse Karen uses to ignore her kid, basically anytime she feels like it. Do not talk to me during my me time, etc. The dad also asked my friend if she'd be okay to help him with his custody battle. He said he understood that her health wasn't great, and that his lawyer had said that a written statement would be fine. While it probably wasn't essential, since they had the police report, he wanted to have as much evidence on his side as possible, just to be sure. Of course, my friend agreed. Karen hasn't yet shown up at my friend's door to scream at her, so she's thinking that maybe dealing with the police put some actual fear of consequences into her. We shall see. I will, of course, post any further updates I receive. Neighbour kept hogging the shared garden, so I kept his Wi-Fi hostage until we moved out. Posted by Legit Android May. A few years ago, my girlfriend and I lived in a small building with only a handful of apartments and a tiny garden that we shared with the rest of the residents. My neighbour was this guy that everyone hated, constantly blaring music, leaving trash in front of his door, loud drunken grill parties all weekend, every weekend, and ignoring all requests to keep it down, citing his rights to be loud. You know the one. Our window had a direct view of the garden, where he hosted these grill parties, and one day, I noticed he had a similar sound system to ours. It required no authentication for a Bluetooth connection, so I wrote a program that would connect his speakers the moment he turned them on, and played the same 15 seconds of gay porn sounds on repeat. He kept taking the speakers to service, which obviously didn't help, so he bought a new set. His new sound system could connect to Wi-Fi. Since he made the mistake of loudly announcing his Wi-Fi password to his guests regularly, I connected to it. I realized he never changed the default router password, and wrote another program that connected automatically and kept rotating his admin password. I even set up my old laptop to run this program continuously. It also kept streaming gay porn to his TV at random intervals, printed a luscious dick pic whenever his printer came online, and either abruptly changed the volume of his speakers every 47 minutes, or kept subtly increasing and decreasing it throughout several hours. I saw people from our ISP at his apartment several times trying to fix his network, but to no avail. The moment they reset his password, my program was there, changing the admin password. After about 3 months of this, they gave him a new router and a new password, which he never changed, and promptly announced to his friends the following weekend. Instead of him blaring his usual music, we listened to him yell and smash kitchenware for the last few weeks before he finally moved out. It was like music to our ears. Entitled Neighbour was being an a-hole about street parking, ends up having a chat with the authorities. Posted by OKBeazlebob666. About 13 years ago, we had a new neighbour who had the attitude that what was his and what was yours was his, especially the parking on the road near the front of his house. The road was a short dead end and had public parking. Now, the issue is our driveway was single wide and plenty long enough for 2 cars. I sometimes parked one vehicle on the road during the day so that my wife and I could easily get in and out without having to switch the cars around. The neighbour would come out and get in my face for parking on his property. The bylaw enforcement was a friend of his and would not do anything. Now this a-hole was also claiming a back injury and claiming disability. Yet he was perfectly capable of building a fence, large rock gardens and a koi pond. Beside his garden, he is proudly growing some devilweed at the back of his yard beside his garage and bragging about it. It wasn't visible from the road, but very visible from my yard. I quietly waited until the plants were quite large, towards the end of growing season. The next time he got in my face, I quietly called the authorities to report the grow-up and said that I was uncomfortable with his criminal behaviour. I went out for a short while and came back to several police cars in his driveway and all his plants ripped out as Exhibit A. He never got in my face again, and we ended up moving away for work shortly afterwards. I heard he lost the house within a year and disappeared. Why'd you stop there? You could have been extra petty and taken pictures of him doing back-breaking labour while on disability and sent in the evidence of the fraud. That's where I thought this was going. Remember, I post new content every day, so subscribe for more juicy tea.